Hi, Joshua Smith of Adapt Faster. Has anyone ever said to you, "You're not listening," or "You're just not getting it"? Think about it. Maybe a friend, maybe a colleague, or maybe your boss at work has given you the harsh and direct feedback that your listening skills stink. Maybe it's because you interrupt people in the middle of their sentences, or maybe even finish their sentences for them. That's annoying. Maybe you like to formulate what you're going to say in response to someone else whilst they're speaking. But if you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're not really listening to what they are saying. Maybe you like to overtalk people and assert your point of view as the more authoritative and respectful point of view, but that invalidates someone else's point of view. Or perhaps you like to use your smartphone, or you pop your laptop and you start typing in the words to capture the cognitive content. But if you're focused on the words, you're actually missing the emotions behind the words, which means you're missing half the communication to begin with. All of these are signs of a lack of empathy in your communication. And take it from Mr. Empathy here, I don't always get it right. Sometimes I speak when I should listen. Sometimes I interrupt people in the middle of their sentences. Just ask my wife. But what I do understand is the difference between cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. And it's emotional empathy that allows me to tune into the facial expressions, the body language, even listen for the vocal quality of someone's voice. These are all clues that maybe it's time for me to shut my mouth and just listen. In a moment, I'll share with you a story about Kate, who was a colleague of mine that had to give an important presentation. She was in a lot of fear before the presentation. I was trying to motivate her. I thought I was doing the right thing. "Oh, you'll be great. Hey, Mr. Optimism, everything will be fine." Kate wasn't getting it. She was still in fear. It wasn't until I was compassionate and vulnerable, and I offered a story about how sometimes I'm afraid before big presentations, that I really connected with Kate on an emotional level. And that was just the thing to transform her fear into something triumphant. Let's look at the chart of cognitive and emotional empathy to see the mistake I made. Kate was having an emotional experience of fear and anxiety about being in front of the room, and I was responding to her cognitively. Cognitive empathy is more like sympathy. I was focused more on my thoughts about what she was experiencing than actually tuning into how she was feeling. I wasn't really feeling with her at all. I was thinking about what was going on for me and more interested in getting on with the project than actually tending to her emotions. I didn't have time. This is a common mistake made at work by managers thinking that emotions aren't important and the work should take a priority. Emotions do matter and can often affect people's performance on tasks. Cognitive empathy isn't always enough. For those of you who like to use your laptops and smartphones when listening, or you're interrupting people in the middle of their sentences, cognitive empathy is as far as you will ever go in your conversations with people. To really communicate, it means we have to be willing to be compassionate and courageous enough to be vulnerable and to tap into our emotions as a way to understand others. Now let's look at emotional empathy. You can see why Kate didn't say very much to me initially. I wasn't getting how she was feeling. She wanted me to understand her feelings, put myself into her situation, and focus on how afraid she was. This is the important difference between managers and leaders. Managers often think emotions don't matter, but leaders tap into emotions as a primary motivator. Leaders know to help a team flourish, you've got to, first, understand where people are emotionally around the challenge or adversity. How are they feeling? By tuning into their feelings, you become more socially intelligent as a leader. You begin to really listen to people, and people feel that you get it. Second, be willing to be compassionate and share how you've been where they are and how you've struggled through a similar challenge or adversity. Third, find a way to motivate your team to see a positive outcome to the challenge or adversity. But you can only do this once you've really connected with your team and they trust you. Listening is one of the hardest things to do in communication, But using emotional empathy allows you to tune into the facial expressions and the body language, which makes you more socially intelligent. Perhaps that is just the thing you can start to do to transform your family or your work colleagues into an experience from something where they might be afraid or anxious into something where you're able to mirror that fear, be vulnerable, be compassionate, and help to transform their experience into something triumphant. Listening is one of the hardest things to do in communication, but using emotional empathy allows you to tune into the facial expressions and the body language, which makes you more socially intelligent. Perhaps that is just the thing you can start to do to transform your family or your work colleagues into an experience from something where they might be afraid or anxious into something where you're able to mirror that fear, be vulnerable, be compassionate, and help to transform their experience into something triumphant.